Welcome to the final episode of this series. I'd say sit back, relax, grab yourself a cup of tea or a drink and some food, because this is going to be the final episode in which we finish not only this Boathouse I'm currently still editing a bit, which I'll get into in a bit, but also the entirety of the other themed area we were talking about, which is the Dark Forest, where the launched coaster starts and runs through. Now we're not finishing the park as we intended when we started the series, with the track ride in there as well, because my gosh, Planet Coaster 2 is coming out. As I'm recording this, it's the 4th of November. It's the evening, it's 9:30. And Planet Coaster is coming out in, is it 48 hours? Yeah, tomorrow's Tuesday. Yeah, so it's even less than 48 hours. It's time has moved so fast I couldn't even keep up. And people have already started posting. A lot of creators got early access to Planet Coaster 2, so with the algorithm being what it is, you probably won't even see this video if you're subscribed to other creators who are already doing Planet Coaster 2. But I still wanted to finish this spark in some way, at least have some sort of a finished product, even if it isn't what we originally intended. It's still something. Something to have started with in Planet Coaster 1 on this whole YouTube journey, and something to jump off of in Planet Coaster 2. There's a diving board pun somewhere in there. Now, last time I was here, I was a bit sick, and my computer was also a bit sick. It still is, in some way. The computer isn't fixed yet, but at least I got my recording settings to not completely, look like... What's a nice word for that? Not so great, let's just call it that. So you should be looking at something that at least looks decently nice to watch, but it should even look pretty good, if I've done my work correctly. Now, getting into what you're looking at, I'm starting this episode with a little alteration to the Boathouse. Someone who I've completely forgotten the name of, but we're here for an hour anyway, so I might as well go and look it up. Someone on the last video suggested that I added some walkways and added some other details to the roof of the Boathouse, and I don't know why I didn't think of that, but it looks amazing. Just having that extra detail, having like the walkways, it makes it feel so much more alive, and it also gives it a bit more definition, so it's just not just the plain yellow roof you're looking onto. It was Messy Micah 7878. You could maybe, like the other empty spots up top in Boathouse, you can make some more areas with a ladder leading up to it, and there being planks, barrels, some tools, etc. for making and repairing your ship. The fact that I didn't think of it, amazing. It's really cool, and yeah, I should have thought of that originally. So I added that to the Boathouse, and now we're moving on to the entire next area of this park, which is the Dark Forest. It doesn't really have a name yet. And for this, I did mess around with a few styles. I started with a sort of ruined castle vibe. I built a few ruins. I colored them in a few, unique colors, so to speak. With I think it was a red one. I put some red in there, and it just didn't really work out. So in the end, I kind of went with Bavarian, but make it spooky. Sort of like that. This sort of weird mix between Bavarian and sort of dilapidated, overgrown old buildings. I'm not really sure what it's inspired by and what it would technically be called, but it was a mess to build it. There was no method to the madness when I was building it. I was just trying stuff out, figuring out what looked right, and kind of feeling the pressure of Planet Coaster 2 nearing. If there's one thing I've learned about myself during this project, it's that I do not work great when deadlines are approaching. I don't deal with that great. So I'm really glad once Planet Coaster 2 comes out that I'll get to take it slow again. Because this park was I mean, it was ambitious from the start. Let's get that out of the way. It was a little too ambitious to finish an entire park in less than a month, and it didn't happen. Also today, you're seeing how long this episode is. Still, it's not gonna be the entire park like we talked about in the first episode. I'm building this station building around the coaster, and I'm really looking back at it. I would have done a few things differently with this, because right now, as I'm recording this has been 4 days ago since this footage was recorded. I was recording this and thinking, you know what? I'll build this building like pretty, like as it's supposed to have been before it was all overgrown and stuff, and then I'll destroy it later. And I sort of forgot about that idea because I'm building this with grid pieces, which are awful for destroying stuff. And it doesn't really make sense either with the layout of the coaster station right now, but the idea was great, execution not so much. So in the end, this building is a bit too clean for the aesthetic I'm going for. I do end up covering it in bushes and adding vines and making it look a little, well, I'd say lost in the woods, or at least lost to time somewhere in the woods. But the other buildings that I'm creating in a bit, they are a bit more dilapidated. So I wanted to create this like, well, like I said, kind of Bavarian building. And the story of this coaster, as far as there is a story, because I didn't elaborate on it as much as with the Evershore Harbor story, is that there's some sort of ancient spirit that was awakened when the inhabitants of this old town were using some dark magic or something like that. And that spirit just raged throughout the town and destroyed everything. And with this coaster, you're basically inhabiting that spirit. So you're rushing through the town, you end up rushing through buildings and flying through old ruins and stuff like that, kind of like the spirit did oh so many years ago. It doesn't have a name yet, now that I think of it. I don't think I named the coaster. I think it's still called Serpent's Run, because I was thinking about some snake wiggling its way through the forest, but that's not the end result here. So yeah, it ends up being this kind of spooky story. Like I mentioned in the earlier episode, I wanted this area to be kind of an... I still don't know the word, like the opposite of Evershore. Is like antagonist? No, it's not. I'm not sure. Like the complete opposite of what Evershore is. Evershore is this happy, joyful fisherman's shanty town where magic is just happily used, and where it's the humans live happily with the magic, so to speak. And I wanted to create the kind of opposite with that with this forest, where apparently something went wrong with magic, and it's left this ruined civilization hidden somewhere deep in the forest, where, as a kind of reminder that you can screw up magic if you're not careful, and you're exploring that as a guest, that like ancient civilization and what happened with them. So realistically, there would also be like hints of what happened, or maybe even straight up like lore books somewhere near the paths where you can read up on the story of this place. Again, with this station, I put in so much detail that it's almost too clean. It's weirdly Japanesey, or like, well, not Japanesey, just like an amalgamation of all kinds of Asian styles in on the inside of the building. Now that I'm looking at it, it looks like the paper kind of walls, but it's supposed to be Bavarian but spooky in the end. Now this forest ends up being quite overgrown. It's not that many buildings inside. I'm gonna be building a restaurant in a bit, which is, well, not the focal point, but is one of the main buildings in this area. And then other than that, it's mostly facades. And I'm also going to be theming the I think it's called Overpower. Is that the one? The Hus topspin that I put down a few episodes ago. I'm going to be incorporating that into the theme as well. And yeah, like I said, the area is basically going to be finished, because Planet Coaster 2 is, well, it's looking to be a great sequel with a few quirks here and there. I've purposely not watched a lot of the creators' videos that have already been released on the game. A bunch of creators got early access, and my YouTube feed has just been flooded with those videos, and I've really tried not to watch them because I I still had to finish this project, and I knew that if I was going to start watching Planet Coaster 2 videos and seeing people build and getting excited about the game myself, I wasn't going to finish this. So once this video is out and you guys have it to watch and the project is finished, in that case, I'm going to be watching Planet Coaster 2 and getting excited for that, like many of you probably have been doing over the past few days, I think. Yeah, days. It's not that I'm not excited, it's just that I wanted to kind of keep my enthusiasm in line, so to speak. Now, looking forward to Planet Coaster 2, might as well, while we have the time right now. I'm going to be starting the series, or I'm going to be starting a series with Planet Coaster 2 the second it comes out, and that's going to be the career mode series we talked about a few episodes ago, to both kind of get used to the game and also try something different. I mean, I've been building in Sandbox for, well, I think like 3 years now without ever touching career mode, and that's a shame sometimes because Frontier puts so much effort into that career mode, and with the new, I think it's called franchise mode, where you have like the collaboration with your parks or with your friends with different parks, and you can enter into challenges and help each other out with parks and stuff like that. There's such a big management aspect to the game now, which, well, it would feel bad to ignore that. So I wanted to try and at least play some of it, and also, like I said, give myself a bit of time to get used to the game, because it's a completely different game that we're gonna get. We're gonna get completely different pieces, completely different themes, completely different rides, slides, and it's really an evolution of what we have right now, and that just takes some getting used to. Now, looking at what we're building right now, this tower is gonna move in the end, so don't get used to its position, but it does end up being sort of a mini weenie next to the tower in Evershore Harbor, the lighthouse, not the tower. So it does end up becoming pretty important. Again, I was completely winging this design. I was using a grid piece because I knew this wasn't going to get destroyed. It was just going to get overgrown. But it's Bavarian-ish. That's really the only brief I gave myself. So I'm not sure what style you'd call this. If you do have a style name for this, please leave it in the comments, because I wouldn't be able to tell you. It's this kind of wood inspired. I think there is a style that I'm basing it off, or well, not a style, like a real world example, but I've been thinking of this ever since I started building this. I just can't remember what it is. It might even be another Creators Planet Coaster project that I'm basing it off. Maybe one of Silveret's, or maybe one of Rudy's, or something like that. Especially with the broken houses you're going to see in a bit. They remind me of something, but I just can't really figure out what. Now, I ended up using this, I think it's the fairy tale roof piece, which I don't like using the bigger kind of stylized roof pieces, but it's the same with the round building in Evershore. Sometimes it just fits perfectly, and it's a happy little accident that it does. And it's the same with this. It just fits perfectly with the theme, and it also fits perfectly with the shape of the tower, which is just a bonus, and it saves me a lot of polygons, because I said it in the previous episode as well, this park is struggling. Like, you're lucky you're watching this sped up. And for the cinematics at the end of this video, and also I might do a little cinematic park showcase video separately, I tried to I turned up all the settings in game, so everything is on ultra, and then I used Cheat Engine to slow down the game by 50%, so that at least I get some sort of reputable FPS, because I'm running right now. I'm running at like 30 to 40 FPS depending on where I'm looking. But with ultra settings, it was, I didn't measure it, but it felt like 10 to 15, and it's not even a complete park. I'm just working way too detailed when you look at it objectively. Now, as for the queue for this ride, it's not that long, and it's also not that interesting. I just wanted to create a little walk through the forest and kind of take you through this dilapidated area where everything's overgrown. And I also moved the tower to this helix where I think it fits way better, and it also provides a little bit more interaction with the coaster, because this coaster really runs through the entire park. It's not really confined to this area, even though a lot of it does take place in this themed area. It runs through Evershore, it even runs past the entrance. And I wanted to make sure that at least it had some interaction with the spooky area as well, because, well, it's where it resides, so yeah, might as well give it some interaction there as well. It also provides some nice interaction with the paths around it. Now this path I'm working on right now, it's currently only the exit path for the station, but it's going to be a little plaza in the end where the cursebreaker resides, which is the top spin. Again, I wanted to try and create a little narrative with this area where probably the spirit that has been angered and has rummaged through the village, they were probably cursed. Maybe it's linked to the Evershore story where Aethera like warded away the evil spirits of the sea. Maybe they went to this area and inadvertently kind of cursed some poor citizen who turned out to be some savage and ended up kind of what's his name from Fantastic Beasts? It's Creed, right? No, Credence, where he turns into this I should really rewatch those movies. Obscura? This black cloud thing that that basically rummages through the entire city and destroys everything when he gets angry. And I think it's something akin to that, where this spirit just hides in its old house, and it's silent until it gets angry, and it just completely destroys everything in its path when it gets going. And that's the trip you're going on when you're in the coaster. Now you'll see me jumping into a building halfway here, because again with this I was winging it. I think I tried like 12 different designs off camera before I was like, hey wait, this might work. And then I started recording again. Now what I didn't show you here, but what you'll see in a bit, is that these walls are actually made up of the window pieces, so they're breakable, so to speak. I can take them apart a bit easier and make them a little more realistic when they are broken down, which we're going to use to make the coaster fly through it. So this is just a facade. But it is the base also for most of the other facades, because I'm not building them by hand again. I'm using this one and copying it around a bit. I tried to make them unique in a way by kind of replacing the windows and editing some parts of it, but in the end it's all the same facade. Because if I was building every building from scratch, we would be looking at, I think, 12 hours of footage. And it's already... If I put all the footage in the timeline just before I started recording this, I have over 7 hours of footage for this one episode. So I'm speeding it up by, I think it's 700%, 600%, so we're probably looking at an episode of about an hour, which in the last episode I talked about how I wanted to cut down the length of the episodes a bit. Now, a lot of you commented that you like the long-form episodes, which, well, it wasn't surprising to me. It was more that I kind of needed that confirmation, I guess, because I like watching other long-form content as well, but I just couldn't imagine that people liked watching me for that long, so it's nice to hear that you do like it. I'm probably going to end up doing a bit of both when it comes to Planet Coaster 2. Have some more long-form projects like this where it's time lapses, or maybe even live streams at some point where it's just sitting down and edit and building the parks. And then to kind of change it up once in a while, I might do a more update style video, or maybe just a showcase of some stuff here and there. I'm not sure. I'm probably going to be mixing it up a bit when it comes to Planet Coaster. Also because I like to mix it up once in a while, try some new stuff, see if it works, and if it doesn't, then, well, at least I tried, right? Same with this whole YouTube thing, you know, as a whole. What did I say? In a hole? That it's not in a hole. It's somewhere in a server farm. No, this whole YouTube thing as a whole is also an experiment for me, just trying to see if I like it, and trying to see if you guys like it, which seems like you do, so that's great. So same with the roof for this building. I'm building it out of these planks so that I can break them up again later. This technique of building a building as it's supposed to be and then breaking it is, I think, a great way of making sort of realistic ruins, where it allows you to kind of envision the building as it's supposed to be and then break it in a realistic way. So here I'm trying to make sure that there's sort of motion in the planks, for example. That sounds really weird, but they kind of shoot outward around the place where the coaster enters, to kind of show that there's been some sort of force there where the spirit flew through the house and broke stuff. And it's the same with the walls. It's only broken around that corner to show that it's, well, first of all, because that's the part where the coaster goes through, but also to kind of show where something happened. If there's just a random ruin somewhere without there being like realistic breakage, so to say, it's like, yeah, okay, but what happened here? And sometimes that's good, where you have a little mystery, but you do want to have some sort of conclusion to it all. And I do end up placing a few of these buildings around where it's just completely broken down and there's not really a story, especially around the queue area of the coaster. I end up putting a copy of this building, I think, where it's just sunk into the ground and it's just there. That's fine, I think. You don't, of course, need a building for everything, but the little environmental storytelling pieces with the spirit running through it, it provides a lot of detail that kind of, well, it kind of sucks you into this world without it purposely sucking you into the world. Like, if you're not looking for it, or if you're not actively in the know of what's happening or with the story or whatever, you could easily just walk past it and not care about it and think, oh, look, it goes through a building, next. But if you're somewhat invested in the story or in the experience of just being there and seeing everything, it could really provide this final piece of the puzzle where it just makes it completely realistic for you and it just completely finishes everything. And I'm really trying to do that with the with the building there. Now, this is going to be the first and only restaurant in the park. We do have a few of the food shops, for example, in Evershore, but this is the real, like, sit-down restaurant. I realized that even though I haven't been on YouTube, I've of course been playing Planet Coaster over the past few years. I rarely put in genuine, like, sit-down places in my park when it comes to restaurants. It's always just the takeout places with the in-game shacks or the in-game storefronts, where you just walk up, get your food, walk away again. And that's not even slightly realistic. Most parks, if not all, have at least some sort of restaurant in them and some sort of place where you can sit down and have your food, because if you're walking all day, of course you want to sit down and eat your food. Now, I did want to try and incorporate this again, so as a kind of forced measure, I realized I was getting quite close to the track in the back there. I end up cutting a bit out of the roof and adding in a small animatronic of a snake there to kind of cover the, well, hole that's there, inexplicable hole. And in the end, you don't really notice it once you're on the coaster, but it does provide a little more interaction with the surrounding area, which is never a bad thing, I think. But yeah, I want to try and get better at this kind of stuff, where of course you need a restaurant in your park. What else? You're not going to be only on coasters the entire day, even though some of us coaster enthusiasts might actually do that. Even then, you want to sit down once in a while and have a drink or have something to eat or just look at the scenery. And it's also a place, really practical, where people can get away from the rain when it does start to rain. I was in Europa Park a few months back, and about halfway through the day, I think it was like 3 o'clock, it was a pretty decent day, had some little light rain the entire day, but that's not going to ruin your park experience. But at like 3 o'clock in the afternoon, it just started hosing down, but genuinely, the rain almost hurt. It was so heavy. It was awful. And we were in the Netherlands area, of all places, where you have the Pirates in Batavia attraction, which is like this indoor boat ride, kind of Pirates of the Caribbean-ish in Disney land, I think it is. It's in Paris, I think, as well. But it's this like slow indoor boat ride. And they have a restaurant in there as well, which is sort of attached to the boat ride. The boat travels through the restaurant, or at least next to the restaurant, and then once you exit the boat ride, you're basically plopped right into that restaurant. So we got on a boat ride when it was starting to look a little cloudy. When we got off that ride, it was hosing down. And we made a split decision to just say, you know what, we'll just go and eat in the restaurant we were just in. Or we just went through on a boat. Because why not? We were hungry and it's fine. The second we got in there, we got a table and it wasn't that busy. There were like, I think, 5-6 other families or groups were eating there. But at that point, of course, everyone in the park was running to get a dry spot. A lot of the coasters had closed, especially, I think, Blue Fire and Voltron were closed because of the rain. So people couldn't really do anything, even if they wanted to, in that rain. And they ran to the nearest place that was covered, and it ended up being that the nearest place for almost half the park where it was covered was that exact restaurant. So we were sitting there enjoying our meals, and we saw just lines outside of people trying to get in because they had no more tables left. We were like the 6th or 7th people to come to that restaurant, and after us it just started flooding in. I think they even got like extra people to man the kitchen because it was this buffet style restaurant. The first time we went, there were like 5 people, 6 people behind the counter. The second time, like half an hour later, we wanted to get some dessert, so we went a second time. It was completely full back there because they couldn't keep up with the demand of all the people rushing into the restaurant. So it's when you're designing a park in real life, and I like to try and pretend that I am whenever I'm building something in Planet Coaster, it's also something you have to keep in mind that guests are going to want to have a dry space. Guests are going to want to have a sit down once in a while. Because if they don't, they just end up walking around all day. And if you want to do that, you better run the marathon. No, you're having a day out. You want to have a sit down once in a while. Hence the restaurant. Now, I don't end up giving this place a name. You can see me messing around with a few designs a bit, but it doesn't end up working out. So I just called this the restaurant and moved on. Sadly, it's also a bit of cutting corners time at this point in the project. With Planet Coaster 2 approaching so quickly, and me having set a completely unreasonable deadline for myself, there comes a time that you have to kill your darlings, as they say. I completely scrapped the idea of the is it the Huntsman? No, it's the Quick Draw. I scrapped the idea of the Quick Draw ride, which I was really excited to try out, but I wasn't gonna make it. I mean, I'm finishing an entire area in one episode where it took me 5 episodes to finish the previous one, and thinking of having to finish another entire area with a dark ride that was going to be highly themed as well. It's just not happening. So I'm leaving that idea for Planet Coaster 2. I'm not sure actually if it's in Planet Coaster 2, where you have the interactive shooting mechanic. But if it is, I promise you, first like large project, large scale park project we're doing, I'm gonna put in a quick draw and I'm gonna theme it so well your pants will fall off, I swear. If it is in Planet Coaster 2, I genuinely don't know. So I had to scrap that idea. I also, you might see it once the last few clips start rolling around. I do end up kind of haphazardly finishing this area, which I'm not too happy about, because ideally I would have loved to put in all the care in the world into this area and have it completely themed like I had in my idea, like I had in mind, with visuals and with storytelling and everything on it, because that's what I like to do. I like to build these worlds and build these stories with, well, just something to kind of discover when you enter. I love how other parks have done that as well, especially with like Efteling, with Symbolica, where you're entering the Palace of the King and you walk through some moving stairs, spoiler alert, but other than that, you don't get that much story. But whenever you do take the time to kind of look around when you're walking through the queue and walking around the area, you find all these little details, and it's in the parchment on the walls, and it's on the stories that are sometimes they're carved into some tablets, or sometimes they're told through videos or videos or voiceovers or something like that. When you pay attention to those little details, the whole world kind of comes together as this completely different universe you've entered, and I think that's I think it's just magical. Oh, how's that for a one-liner? No, it's my gosh, it's just it's cool that you can make people believe that kind of stuff just by kind of telling them that, hey, you're in another world now, and people's brains will just go, are you sure? Yeah, look at all these details. Oh, okay, then I believe you, I'm in another world. And you can completely fool people, just immersing them into this alternate reality you've created with alternate rules, different characters, different worlds, different countries. I like trying to do that. I have a few other projects as well aside from Planet Coaster, which I may or may not end up making videos on. I'm not sure what this channel is going to be. For now, it's Planet Coaster. Welcome to the club. But one of those projects is something I've been doing for 10 years, actually. This is the 10th year I'm doing it. With our family and close friends, we host a music quiz every year. And it ended up becoming a bit bigger than I had ever anticipated, because at the first year, it was 2014, was our first year. At Christmas, it was me with a phone, a JBL Go first generation, so the really boxy one, Bluetooth speaker, and I was just playing songs on Spotify, and they had to shout whenever they thought they knew the song name, and whoever shouted first got a point. And we just did that for 3 hours, and yay, you won or you lost. Fine, now let's eat Christmas dinner. That was the first ever big music quiz we did. And over the years, it ended up becoming more and more of a passion project, where right now, for the 10th anniversary of the music quiz, we're building sets. I'm 3D printing props, I'm 3D printing game pieces. I've already, I have 5 or 6 other people involved with the production of this, well, event, which it has become. And we're even looking to expanding to more of a, well, open event for the next year, where people can just sign up to join in and they can play. And it's become such a big project where it's not just a music quiz. I'm trying to incorporate a different theme each year. Last year we had a theme where it was kind of based off of an old factory, so everything was themed to electricity and everything was kind of grimy and metally, and we had this complete physical like game board where we played the game, and it was completely themed. I had fake newspapers with like articles of how an old factory burned down and now something has awoken again within it, and it was the power of music or something. I didn't finish it completely, that storyline, because I wanted to get to the quiz, but just building those kind of worlds, it's become a bit of a passion project of mine. And I think that in theme park design, that's basically what you're doing. You're building a world for people to explore and get lost in, and with theming and with storytelling and with environmental storytelling especially, you can really sell that well, you're not in the real world for a bit. And I think that's exactly what theme parks are trying to accomplish, unless you're Wallaby Holland and your main goal is to just attract rowdy teenagers, but don't know where that came from. Apparently I have some deep-seated hatred for Wallaby, which I wasn't aware of myself. But no, it's the theme parks that do go the extra mile to really immerse you in their story, their worlds. They are the people and the corporations that I admire. I don't admire corporations quickly, but those are the ones I do. I've been dying to go to the Efteling again because, well, it's only 4 days ago the new Danse Macabre opened, and as far as I've seen, I haven't watched any on-rides yet because I want it to be a surprise when I do go. But as far as I've seen and what I've heard of the theme park enthusiasts that have, of course, made videos of it, it's really, well, it's basically what I just described. This complete storytelling where you're immersed into it, and it just oozes like storytelling left and right. Especially with the fact that, well, it's replacing a classic. For those of you that don't know or that aren't from the Netherlands, the Efteling had an attraction which was called Spookslot, and it was basically their haunted house, so to speak. And what would that haunted house entail? You would walk in, you would see these violins and these ghosts dancing to the Danse Macabre, which is a classical piece of music, and then afterwards you'd walk out. That was, in broad terms, there were some other like little pre-scenes before you got there, but that was basically it. But it was built somewhere in the, I want to say 70s? I am not sure. No, I won't look it up, but somewhere a long time ago, when that was really impressive, and it used the classical pepper ghost effect as well for some of the spirits wandering through, and it was just, back then, that was genuinely one of the most impressive things people had ever seen. So it just became engraved in Dutch culture, with Spookslot, the theme, the Danse Macabre, being instantly recognizable for most Dutch people who have been to that park. And when they announced that they would be replacing it, a lot of people were angry. Same with the Bob, which ended up being replaced by Max and Moritz. A lot of people were angry about that because it was just a cult classic. It was, for me, the Bob was actually one of my first, well, roller coasters, so to speak. It was not technically a roller coaster, I think, because it was a bobsled, but I went on like the little kiddie roller coaster at Toverland when I was 7, 8-ish, and after that I went on the Bob, and I didn't dare go on the Python because it was too big and scary for me. So, and a lot of people have similar experience to that, where especially the Efteling, it's one of the first parks for a lot of people in the Netherlands they go to, and when one of those when that park says that they're going to be tearing down one of their most, well, I wouldn't say beloved, because over the last few years, most people skipped it when they went to the Efteling. They just went to the bigger attractions straight away. But it was iconic, and it was well, you have this prestige meter in Planet Coaster, right? Where new attractions are fun for guests and attractive, then they become like and then they become classic and they get more attention again. Spoke Slot was in that category, where it was so old that it was just engraved in people's minds, and they couldn't go without it, even though they did. Something like that. There's probably some philosophical way of saying that. So, with them basing the new attraction basically off the Danse Macabre again, which is the classical music, it's almost a successor to Spoke Slot. It's like what Spoke Slot should have been if they had the technology back then. It's probably, if you would redesign Spoke Slot in 2024, like that meme that you see online sometimes. Now, speaking of creepy, I'm building a little more on the nose creepy thing here in the corner with Cursebreaker, which is the name of the top spin, where I put some of the Blair Witch-esque crosses in the front yard, and I put some spider webs in there as well for good measure to, well, it's creepy, right? You gotta have some spider webs in there. The story for this is that with the curse being on that person who ended up ravaging through the town, someone had tried to break that curse, and they did that with a machine, or they tried to do that with a machine. That machine being the top spin itself. So it's called Cursebreaker in that sense, and I wanted to try and make it so that you travel through the house as a queue, and you kind of have this dilapidated house left, and maybe there's some more trinkets in there. Again, I put up the frames on the wall with the intention of adding visuals in there, but I just didn't end up doing it because it was a little too much work for the time we had left. But yeah, it does again feed into the whole story of the area, with this cursed person being turned angry by this spirit and ravaging through the town. Of course, the townsfolk were going to try and help them. So that's the way that the Cursebreaker fits into the whole thing. I wanted to try and at least make it fit in somewhat. Now, what you're seeing now is shameful. It's me trying to custom support this coaster, which I haven't seen any comments about it yet, but I want to get it out of the way for the coaster nerds out there. I don't know what coaster this is. I don't know. I mean, I do know it's a Premier Skyrocket 2 or Skyrocket model, or like the Torque in I don't know which park it is in. It's not Torque. It's called, what's it called? I don't know. Torque is the in-game name. I know it's that, but I'm not sure what it's meant to represent here. Maybe Premier would build something like this. I'm not sure. Maybe it's completely bogus and unrealistic. It sort of reminds me of the newer Vekoma kind of coasters with the outward bank turns left and right and the kind of overbank turns over the station. But I didn't build this knowing I was going to build a certain manufacturer or type. So these custom supports are really only there for aesthetic reasons. They are probably completely unrealistic when it comes to genuinely supporting a coaster. But they do look a lot better than the regular ones. And they also provide a little bit more of a sight line or something to look at once you're walking through this area. And it also helps to kind of mitigate the jungle of just in-game supports, which again I would have tried to custom support this entire thing, but A, I am not that great at it, and B, it would have taken me a long time to do so. And with the amount of time we have left, I had to kill some darlings left and right. So I ended up putting in custom supports for the top. It's not really a top hat, it's a double top hat, I guess. Maybe a camelback, not sure. And I also end up putting a kind of same-ish support under the brake run, where it ends up being this 3 arched kind of structure when you look at it right, and I think that looks really cool, provides a little interest as well, and breaks up the monotony of the default supports as well. Now, finishing the queue of this, I wanted to try and keep the rock work, well, not light, because it isn't, but I'm not going to be completely doing everything with rocks. Again, also for performance sake, but also sort of realism sake, whereas realism isn't really a factor in this park. But realistically, if you have this much greenery and rock work around your park, you would need an entire, or a giant, like, gardening crew to keep track of it all and keep it well maintained and groomed. And of course you can let it grow wild a bit. I mean, especially with an area like this, you'd probably be letting it grow wild on purpose to kind of show that it has been overgrown. But even that needs grooming left and right, because otherwise it would be growing onto the coaster and you don't want that. It would be growing over the queue lines, you don't want that, and it would be growing over scenery as well. So with this area you have to take the realism with a grain of salt, where also with the area next to Evershore where the statue is just coming out of the water, that's way too much greenery, and it's, with that area especially, it's completely inaccessible to anyone. Nobody from, if you do have a greenery department, nobody is getting there. Now with this queue, I want to try provide a little bit of shade. I try to avoid these kind of switchback style queues. I think that's what Walt Disney once called them. I heard a little, well, not a little story, I think it's just true, where the reason behind the switchback queue, according to Walt Disney, was that when you are faced with other people, so you're like you're walking one direction, they are walking towards you and the next way over, you're inclined to talk to those people and like have fun social interactions with people. And I think back in the 70s that probably would have worked. Now that we're in the 21st century, not so much. People in the queues are, well, from what I've seen, they are mostly frantically trying to avoid eye contact with other people, or they're just stuck on their phone and they are just looking at other stuff. So queues in this day and age need to be built a little different, and one of the best ways to do that is to, one, make sure you don't see all of the queue in front of you so it doesn't feel as long, and two, to make sure there's stuff to see and do once you're in the queue. Again, with Efteling, with the new Max and Moritz, at some point there's a whoopee cushion piano next to a part of the queue. It's the most childish and ridiculous thing ever, but it keeps you entertained. It gives you something to do. You can genuinely play it by sitting on the whoopee cushions, and it just gives you something to look at, gives you something to do, and it makes the wait feel a lot less long. So I try to avoid those switchbacks, but when I do, I at least provide some covering, because you're going to be standing in them for a while. Now, we're slowly nearing the end of this episode, so I should probably talk about what's going to happen after this. I am not going to be releasing the park immediately on the Steam Workshop, which, saying this out loud, it sounds really weird, because Planet Coaster is probably going to be sort of obsolete within a few weeks, with the new game coming out. But I just don't feel entirely done with this park yet, but there's also not enough to do to make interesting videos. So I'm just gonna finish this off camera when I have a few hours left and I don't have anything to do with Planet Coaster 2. I'm just gonna be finishing this park off, and I think I'll have it ready for release in about a week, and then it'll be up for download on the Steam Workshop. I'm gonna be making a little, well, I'm hoping to make a little cinematic park tour to upload as well, with some pretty shots and some pretty, well, a little overview of the park, so to say. I'm probably gonna put a few of those shots at the end of this video as well, as a little treat for sitting through almost an hour of me rambling about my life and stuff that doesn't have anything to do with building stuff in Planet Coaster. And then after that video is done, we're on to Planet Coaster 2, which I have no real big plans for, apart from the career mode series we talked about a bit earlier. I don't have any big plans sketched out for what I want to do in Planet Coaster 2. I'm really going to go with the flow. I'm probably going to be building a water park. I'm probably going to be building a Viking thing, because that's just the theme that's included. But other than that, I have no idea. So I guess for now I want to thank you for watching. Not only this video, but this series as a whole. I'm going to leave you with a few of the cinematics, and after that, well, we're moving on, aren't we? So, again, thanks for watching, and bye-bye.